Mr. Chairman, once again, we find the government picking winners and losers. Rialto, Colony Capital, Oak Tree Capital, and others are the winners. Builders, developers, and even their subcontractors, and in some cases their purchasers that have previously purchased their product are the losers. Make no mistake, as Rialto's the case that Mr. Miller was talking about, and the other managing partners are getting a great deal. They get financial information about their competitors for pennies on the dollar. In fact, Rialto only paid $241 million for $3 billion in loans. This is approximately 8 cents on the dollar. To add to this sweetheart deal, I think, Rialto received a $600 million loan from the FDIC, interest-free, non-recourse, for 7 to 10 years. Now, that is a deal that I think most of these borrowers would have took if they could have bought this loan for 8 cents or put up 8 cents on the dollar and then had the FDIC loan them the rest of it for 7 years with no interest and no recourse. I think the FDIC would have recovered a lot more money. But wait, there's more. Rialto and these other managing partners are paid a management fee. On this particular case, the $3 billion case, I believe the fee was $32 million for the first year. This is paid on the unpaid balance. So what incentive is there for any of these managing partners to settle the loan when they're getting a management fee on the whole deal? There's no incentive. If you take the $32 million and divide it by the number of loans, which I think was 5,200, they're being paid $6,100 per loan per year. And this is paid on the unpaid principal balance of the portfolio. In fact, many of my constituents have tried to negotiate with Rialto and the FDIC. The FDIC is probably the hardest agency that I'm familiar with that is willing to negotiate anything.
So today I want to find out what led the FDIC to give an extremely favorable deal to Rialto Capital, and consider the terms of the agreement between the FDIC and Rialto. It's ironic, my colleague uses the same term I have here. Sweetheart deal is what comes to mind. Rialto was allowed to pay 8 cents. It's worth repeating, 8 cents on the dollar for $3 billion worth of assets. Further, the FDIC issued Rialto a 10-year, over $600 million loan at 0% interest. That's a great deal. I believe that had Mr. Fogg or any other home builder in my area had been given a 10-year, zero-interest loan, that they would have provided a much higher return than 8 cents on the dollar. Instead, most were left to deal with Rialto, who, and excuse me, Mr. Miller, I know that you said you work with a high degree of respect and decency. I can give you case after case. I've been in office 15 months, and this is the one where I've had case after case after case. My church came to me and said Rialto won't negotiate with us. And I got to tell you, they're not a for-profit entity. So I accept that businesses fail. That's part of the free enterprise system. What I don't accept is when a government or quasi-government agency that has a taxpayer guarantee makes a deal that makes small businesses at a disadvantage. That's what I don't accept. And so today, I'm hopeful to understand the interest not only that Rialto has, but Lennar Homes, who has now moved into my area, and what your plans are in Clark County. Technically, I know it's not allowed for Lennar to buy from Rialto the land it obtained under such agreeable terms, yet your website shows that they've moved into Vancouver, and I'm very interested in that relationship. I'm interested in the major tracts of land in my largest county that are now owned by Rialto, and hearing what the plans are moving forward and making sure that the FDIC does its job with regard to oversight. So I'm grateful to be here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Edwards, the last time we spoke on the record, which I think was August 2011,
yes, sir,
on structured transactions, I asked you if it would be best for a managing partner to go to court and obtain a judgment and allow the borrower to continue to accrue the interest and the taxes rather than foreclosing and taking the collateral first. Your response was that it seemed to be a case-specific situation. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
So my office sent you case after case to prove our claim that Rialto specifically is litigating over negotiating. However, your answers are the equivalent of giving me and this Congress the finger. Dated March 27, 2002, you said the FDIC states, although the FDIC holds an equity interest in the LLC, such as Rialto, we do not manage or service the assets that were conveyed to the LLCs or Rialto itself. Therefore, the FDIC is not in a position to control a resolution strategy to loans owned by the LLC. Saying that even though you're a 60% in the deal, that you have fronted $642 million, that you have no say-so in it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a couple of questions. Mr. Westmoreland made a very important point. Now, I understand that you're saying, in concept, you set up this LLC by way of trying to protect the depositors, and you're working with the private sector, and they're putting in some skin, and it's supposed to work. We're not opposed to that idea. The problem is, in practice, we've seen very different things. I think you have about 150 or had loans. Some were defaulted, some were performing. And I have instance after instance after instance where cases, people who did not talk, they were not related. I shared my church. There are nonprofits, there are developers. It is across the board who have come to me and said, we cannot negotiate in good faith with Rialto because they will not work. They won't negotiate. I almost laugh to hear you say negotiate. It's like the bully on the playground coming up to the skinny kid and saying, give me your lunch. That's not negotiating. Yeah, the kid could say no, but he's going to lose his lunch and get a black eye anyway. So I feel like so where this comes to, if you were operating on your own with your own capital, you wouldn't have me here questioning it. My problem is when an agency steps in and says to a construction loan that's performing, we are not going to extend any more payment to you, and then we're going to sell the loan to a business who has over 20 years of experience and understands how to develop this and has unlimited, or I shouldn't say unlimited, but significant access to capital and a tremendous sweetheart loan deal, we got a problem. And so to hear you say that there is a negotiation taking place in good faith, I guess that's one thing that I would ask. Is that something you're willing to go back on? If I present to you cases, probably 80 of them, where people have not been able to negotiate, and many of them are in foreclosure at this point or have lost it all in bankruptcy. And part of my concern is when someone is, by nature of home construction or commercial development, the way that the loan works is the money comes in phases. So if the FDIC says, sorry, we're going to cut you off, you don't get to finish it, it makes it very difficult then when you have the new owner of a loan who comes in and says, we want it all now. I mean, you are by definition picking winners and losers, and the government shouldn't be in that business. Mr. Edwards, I have a question. Well, it's kind of a two-parter. Actually, between the two of you, I've heard this now. But Mr. Miller, your testimony stated that Rialto purchased the 5,500 distressed loans with an unpaid balance of $3 billion, with purchase price of 1.2. However, Rialto paid the $250, which is 8 cents on the dollar down, and the FDIC picked up the remaining 600 plus million. So that's meaning that you put down 8 cents on the dollar, and I have two questions with that. First, how were these deals negotiated? And second, perhaps this is more from Mr. Edwards, was the highest bidder really 8 cents? I mean, I do have folks in my neck of the woods who maybe couldn't have hit the whole 100%, but they could have hit 60 cents, they could have hit 80 cents. But was the highest bidder really 8 cents?
Mr. Edwards, did you go to, or did anybody go to any of these specific borrowers and say, if you can come up with % of what this is, what the loan is, we will give you a loan for the remainder of it. We will be a partner with you at 60%. and we will give you 7 to 10 years to do this, and it'll be at no interest, and there will be no recourse to you. Did you give any of those borrowers that opportunity?
No, we did not. What we do when
Do you think any of those borrowers would have taken that opportunity?
I'm certain they would have, but
Well, you were at the hearing that we had in Atlanta, and Mr. Miller, we had it in Noonan, Georgia, and we had people from Washington State, California, Nevada, Texas, Florida, and New Jersey that came that had problems with Rialto. Not one other mention of Starwood, Foursquare, Colony, anybody else. These people traveled on their own dime to come to that hearing. And that, I mean, you know, that's just one side of the story, and I can't wait to get yours on some of these other things. But that's a problem when you've got people traveling across the country just to come to a hearing that they're not even going to get to testify in. So, you know, Mr. Edwards, I just find it very, very troubling that the FDIC has not done more to make sure that at least some of these people have an opportunity to have the same deal you're offering other folks. That just makes sense. And with that, couldn't you have divided those up into smaller things where more people could want to get in on this deal where they pay 8 cents down, and then you loan them the balance at 0% interest for 7 to 10 years with no recourse? Well, don't you think people would be interested in that? Now, can you give me, and not right now, but just in writing, give me an example of where you went in to some unfinished homes and worked it out with the borrower to finish those homes up? I want to know where those are at, because I don't know of any of them. And in fact, people have had a terrible time even getting in touch with somebody about the FDIC, and the FDIC said, we're not a bank, we don't do that, so I'd like to know exactly where those are. But Mr. Miller, in your testimony, you say that the borrower you deal with are advised by counsel at every point in the negotiations. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, they are, sir.
However, we have heard that from different people that Rialto's pre-negotiation letter sent to borrowers includes a clause that prevents the borrower from bringing legal counsel to negotiations. In fact, I have heard reports that Rialto will not engage with borrowers who have counsel present. Is this the open process that you are claiming that you're holding up as a model? Just asking you if you would look at a notification from Rialto to a borrower telling them that they could not have counsel during the negotiations.
Sir.
So it's possible that somebody not being represented by counsel was actually negotiating with an attorney. Is that possible?
In this agreement. However, Lennar's recently decided to begin buying land and building homes in Southwest Washington, the same area Rialto owns huge amounts of undeveloped land that remains deadlocked. Can you explain this decision? Are there laws prohibiting Lennar and Rialto from discussing the loans in the land that they own, meaning you have access to competitors, other developers, you have their financials, basically. Can you share that information? And further, what is to stop Rialto from sitting on the undeveloped land to jack up the price of developments Lennar's planning? And I understand that this is for Mr. Miller. Lennar is not actually legally allowed to buy land acquired by Rialto. I find it interesting that when Clark County was the largest and fastest growing county in the state of Washington, that Lennar wasn't there. Every home builder in like the West Coast was there, but Lennar wasn't there until everything went down, and there's these holdings by a company that isn't the same, but they're cousins, so to speak. That's, you could speak to that if you'd like, but primarily for Mr. Miller.
Thank you for your question. Boy, there are so many things. I feel like I'm sitting here as a villain and I don't get to answer any of the questions. Let me say,
to a lot of broken homes in my neck of the woods, you are a villain, and I'm that's not my personal, but I have a lot of broken homes.
Thank you.